The signal came at 3 in the morning, Earth time. It traveled across the cold emptiness of space for 17 hours before it reached the listening stations on Luna Base. The computers there processed millions of signals every day. Most were natural sounds from dying stars or distant pulsars, but this one was different. This one carried a voice. The technicians on duty almost missed it. They were tired, drinking their fourth cup of coffee, watching screens filled with numbers that meant nothing special. Then the alarm went off. A priority signal. Someone was calling for help. Admiral T. Quan-Su was sleeping in his quarters aboard the battleship Horizon's Edge when his communicator buzzed. He opened his eyes immediately. 30 years in the military had trained him to wake up fast. He did not waste time feeling confused or sleepy. He simply sat up, grabbed the device, and answered. "Admiral, we have a situation," said the voice of his communications officer. "You need to see this." 10 minutes later, T stood on the bridge of his ship. The main display showed the face of an alien. The creature was thin and delicate, with skin so pale it was almost see-through. Its eyes were large and round, filled with terror. Behind it, T could see flames and hear screaming. "Please," the alien said in a translation provided by the ship's computer. "We are the Velori. Our colony on Shalvara is under attack. The Morthak swarm has found us. They are killing everyone. We have sent calls to the Galactic Council, but no one answers. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. Our children are dying." The message ended. The screen went dark. Captain Yuna Bay stood beside the Admiral. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She had served under T for 8 years and knew him better than most. She could see the muscles in his jaw tighten as he watched the message. "The Velori," she said quietly. "I've read about them. Peaceful species. They build cities out of crystal on low-gravity moons. Their entire civilization is based on art and music. They have no military." "And the Morthak?" T asked. Yuna pulled up the file on her tablet. "Biomechanical predators. They travel in massive swarms, consuming everything in their path. They have destroyed at least 11 civilizations in the past century. The Galactic Council classified them as an extinction-level threat." "What did the Council do about them?" Yuna's expression turned cold. "Nothing. They decided the Morthak were too dangerous to fight. Their official policy is to evacuate threatened systems and let the swarm pass through." T was silent for a long moment. He looked at the frozen image of the Velori ambassador on the screen. The fear in those alien eyes was something he recognized. He had seen that same fear in human eyes during the wars of his youth. It was the fear of someone who knew death was coming and had no way to stop it. "How far is Shalvara from our position?" he asked. 42 light years, sir. With our jump drives, we could be there in 6 hours." "And the Council, what will they say if we interfere?" Yuna almost laughed. "The Council has classified Earth as a Class 7 death world. They think we are barely civilized. They expect nothing from us except violence and early death. They certainly do not expect us to help anyone." T nodded slowly. The Galactic Council had never understood humans. They looked at Earth and saw a nightmare world of crushing gravity, extreme temperatures, deadly predators, and poisonous air. They could not understand how any intelligent species could evolve in such a place. They assumed humans were monsters, products of a monster world. They were not entirely wrong. But they were not entirely right either. T turned to face his crew. The bridge was filled with young men and women from every corner of Earth. Some came from the frozen north. Others came from tropical islands. Some had grown up in massive cities. Others had lived in tiny villages. But they all shared one thing: they were human, and humans did not ignore cries for help. "Contact Fleet Command," T ordered. "Tell them we are responding to a distress signal from the Velori colony on Shalvara. Request all available ships to join us at the following coordinates." Yuna's fingers flew across her console. "Sir, Fleet Command is asking for confirmation. They want to know if you understand the risk. The Morthak have destroyed entire armadas. Tell them I understand perfectly, T replied, and tell them to hurry. Within 1 hour, the response began. Ships from across the solar system changed course and headed for the rendezvous point. Battleships, carriers, destroyers, troop transports, 47 warships in total, carrying over 200,000 soldiers. It was the largest fleet humanity had assembled since the last war. Aboard the transport ship Iron Mountain, Lieutenant Han Diho checked his equipment for the 10th time. His plasma rifle was charged. His armor was sealed. His squad of 12 soldiers was ready. They had trained for years for this moment. "You think the aliens are still alive?" asked Private Mina Ko. She was the youngest member of the squad, barely 20 years old, but she had already proven herself in 3 combat operations. "We have to assume they are," Han replied. "That is why we are going." Sergeant Wu Jinho laughed from across the compartment. He was a big man with a shaved head and scars on his arms from old battles. "The council species think we are crazy, you know. They cannot understand why we would risk our lives for strangers." "Maybe they have never needed saving," Han said quietly. Wu stopped laughing. He looked at his lieutenant with new respect. "Maybe you are right." Back on the horizon's edge, Admiral T watched as the fleet assembled. 47 ships forming a wall of metal and fire in the darkness of space. It was a beautiful sight, in its own terrible way. Yuna approached him with a tablet. "Sir, the Galactic Council has sent a formal message. They are advising us not to interfere with the situation on Shalvara. They say the Velori are a lost cause. They say we will only add to the death count." T took the tablet and read the message. Then he deleted it. "The Council can give advice," he said, "but they cannot give orders, not to us." Yuna smiled. It was a cold smile, the kind that promised violence. "The fleet is ready, Admiral. All ships report green. Jump drives are charged." T took one last look at the frozen image of the Velori ambassador. He remembered the fear in those alien eyes. He remembered the screaming in the background. He remembered the words, "Our children are dying." "Jump," he ordered. The fleet vanished from normal space. 6 hours later, they would arrive at a burning moon. They would find horrors beyond imagination. They would fight creatures that had never known defeat. And they would teach the galaxy what it meant to be a Deathworlder. But for now, in the strange silence of faster-than-light travel, Admiral T allowed himself one moment of doubt, one moment of fear, one moment of wondering if he had made the right choice. Then he pushed those thoughts away. There was work to do, there were lives to save. And humans did not run from a fight. The moon of Shalvara was burning when the fleet arrived. From orbit, Admiral T could see the fire spreading across the surface. Great columns of black smoke rose from what had once been beautiful crystal cities. The Velori had spent centuries building those cities, creating works of art that glittered under the light of their distant sun. Now those cities were tombs. "Status report," T commanded. Yuna's voice was steady, but T could hear the tension underneath. "Morthak fleet detected on the far side of the moon. Approximately 30 organic warships. They appear to be feeding." "Feeding on what?" "The moon's resources, the cities, She paused. "The population." T felt something cold settle in his chest. It was not fear exactly. It was rage. A quiet, burning rage that he had learned to control long ago. He let it fuel him, but he did not let it rule him. "Launch fighters," he ordered. "All ships prepare for combat. We hit them fast and we hit them hard." The fleet spread out into attack formation. The carriers opened their bays and released hundreds of small fighter craft. The battleships powered up their main cannons. The destroyers moved to protect the flanks. And the Morthak turned to face them. The alien ships were unlike anything in human design. They were not built from metal and circuits. They were grown from flesh and bone. Each ship was a living creature, hundreds of meters long, covered in thick armor made of hardened chitin. They moved through space like massive insects, their many legs twitching, their great mouths opening to reveal rows of teeth. "They are coming," Una said unnecessarily. "Let them come," T replied. The first Morthax ship fired. A beam of green energy shot across the void and struck a destroyer on the left flank. The human ship shook but held together. Its shields absorbed the blow. Then it fired back. The battle began. Far below, on the burning surface of the moon, Lieutenant Handiho felt his drop pod shake as it entered the atmosphere. Around him, his squad sat in their harnesses, weapons ready, faces calm. They had trained for this. They were ready. 30 seconds to landing, the pilot announced over the intercom. Han looked at his soldiers. There was Mina Ko checking her rifle one last time. There was Sergeant Wu Jinho, his eyes closed, his lips moving in a silent prayer. There were the twins, Jun and Hai, who always fought side by side. There were the others, 10 good soldiers who had volunteered for this mission. "Remember your training," Han said. "Stay close. Watch each other's backs. And no matter what we see down there, we keep moving. Our job is to find survivors and protect them. Everything else is secondary." The pod hit the ground hard. The doors blew open. Hot air rushed in, carrying the smell of smoke and something else. Something wrong, something rotten. Han was first out. His boots hit the ground and he raised his rifle, scanning the area. They had landed in what had once been a park. The trees were alien shapes with silver leaves and purple bark. Most of them were on fire. "Move out," he ordered. The squad advanced through the ruins. The crystal buildings around them had shattered, leaving sharp fragments everywhere. Bodies lay in the streets. Velori bodies. They were so thin, so fragile. Most of them had been torn apart. Private Mina stopped beside one of the bodies. It was a child, barely formed, with translucent skin and closed eyes. She looked at it for a long moment, her face hard. "Keep moving," Han said gently. "We cannot help the dead, we can help the living." Mina nodded and followed. They heard the Morthac before they saw them. A clicking sound like thousands of insects walking on glass. Then a scream, a human scream. Han broke into a run. His squad followed. They found them in what had been a marketplace. A group of human soldiers, maybe 20 in total, trapped behind an overturned transport vehicle. They were firing at the creatures surrounding them, but their shots were not enough. The Morthac were nightmares given form. Each one was the size of a car, with 6 legs ending in sharp blades. Their bodies were covered in dark armor that seemed to absorb the light. Their heads were long and narrow, with too many eyes and mouths filled with teeth. There were hundreds of them. "Open fire," Han shouted. His squad did not hesitate. 12 rifles spoke at once, sending streams of plasma into the Morthac swarm. The creatures screamed as the superheated energy burned through their armor. Bodies fell, but more kept coming. Mina stepped forward, her rifle firing in short, controlled bursts. 3 Morthac charged at her. She killed the first 2 with headshots. The third reached her and raised a bladed limb to strike. She ducked under the blow, pulled her sidearm and shot it through the neck. The creature collapsed at her feet, its dark blood spraying across her armor. "Sergeant Wu, get those soldiers out of there," Han commanded. Wu ran forward, using his larger frame as a shield. He grabbed wounded soldiers and dragged them to safety while the rest of the squad provided cover fire. A Morthac blade caught his arm, cutting through his armor and into the flesh beneath. He grunted in pain but did not stop. He kept moving, kept pulling people to safety. The twins, Jun and Hai, worked together like a single organism. One would fire while the other reloaded. They moved in perfect sync, covering each other's blind spots. When a Morthac got too close, they would switch to close combat, using their rifles as clubs and their knives as backup. Han emptied his rifle into a creature that was climbing over the barricade. He dropped the weapon, drew his pistol, and kept firing. His shots were precise, each one finding a weak point in the Morthak armor. The creatures kept coming. "We cannot hold them," one of the rescued soldiers shouted. "We will hold them," Han replied. "We are not leaving anyone behind." Above them, the sky lit up with explosions. The fleet was winning its battle in orbit. Morthak ships were dying, their organic hulls burning and breaking apart. But the victory came at a cost. 2 human destroyers had been lost. Another was badly damaged. Admiral T watched the battle from his command chair, issuing orders with calm precision. His ships were faster, their weapons more accurate. But the Morthak were tough. They could take damage that would destroy any normal vessel. "The enemy flagship is moving," Yuna reported. "It is heading for the planet." T studied the tactical display. The Morthak flagship was massive, 3 times the size of his own battleship. If it reached the surface, it would release thousands more warriors. "Target that ship," he ordered. "All main batteries fire on my command." 20 battleships turned their cannons toward the flagship. Energy built in the weapons, creating a glow that could be seen across the system. "Fire!" The beams struck the flagship simultaneously. The organic armor held for 3 seconds. Then it failed. The ship split open like a rotten fruit, spilling its contents into space. Thousands of Morthak warriors died in the vacuum, their bodies freezing instantly. "Target destroyed," Yuna said. On the surface, Han saw the flash in the sky. He did not know what it meant, but he hoped it was good news. His squad was almost out of ammunition. They had rescued 37 soldiers, but more Morthak were coming. Always more. "Fall back," he ordered. "Everyone fall back to the extraction point." They ran through the burning streets, carrying their wounded, firing at the creatures chasing them. The Morthak were fast, but humans were stubborn. They did not stop. They did not give up. When the rescue shuttles arrived, Han was the last one aboard. He stood at the door, firing at the approaching horde until the moment the doors closed. As the shuttle rose into the burning sky, he looked down at the moon below. The Velori were dying. The Morthak were everywhere. The battle was far from over. But humanity had arrived, and they would not leave until the job was done. The city of Luminara was the last hope for the Velori. It rose from the moon's surface like a dream made solid. Crystal towers reached toward the stars, their surfaces catching the light and turning it into rainbows. Before the invasion, it had been a place of music and art, where the Velori gathered to celebrate their culture and their peace. Now it was a fortress, the last fortress. Over 300,000 Velori had fled to Luminara when the Morthak came. They crowded into shelters deep beneath the crystal towers, holding their children close, praying to gods who did not answer. The city's defenses were weak. The Velori had never believed in war. They had never thought they would need weapons. They were wrong. Commander Hana Rin stood on a hill 3 kilometers from the city walls. Behind her, human soldiers were setting up a forward operating base. Tents, weapons stations, medical facilities, everything an army needed to fight a war. She was a tall woman with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She had fought in the border wars on Mars. She had led rescue operations on the burning moons of Jupiter. She had never lost a mission. She did not plan to start now. "Report," she said to her tactical officer, Lieutenant Sora Yun. Sora was young but brilliant. She could read a battlefield the way others read books. Her fingers moved across her tablet as she pulled up the latest data. "The Morthak are massing on the eastern plain," she said. "We estimate at least 50,000 warriors. They are waiting for something." "The Queen," Hana said. Sora nodded. "Intelligence confirms a hive queen is present on the moon. She is located in a crater approximately 20 kilometers from here. As long as she lives, the swarm will keep coming." Hana looked at the eastern plain. Even from this distance, she could see the dark mass of the Morthak army. They moved like a living sea, thousands of creatures shifting and clicking and waiting for the order to attack. "How long before they breach the city?" she asked. 48 hours, maybe less." Hana was silent for a moment. She thought about the Velori in those shelters. She thought about the children, thin and delicate, who had never known violence until the Morthak came. She thought about what would happen to them if the city fell. "Then we do not let them reach the city," she said. She gathered her officers around a holographic map of the battlefield. Captain Sung Hyun was there, a veteran soldier with a face like carved stone. Major Kwan Ho Jun stood beside him, smaller but just as deadly. And there were others, men and women who had chosen to fight on a burning moon for people they had never met. "We will divide our forces into 3 groups, Hana explained. "Captain Sung, you will lead the first group. Your job is simple. You will attack the Morthak head-on. You will make noise. You will make them bleed. You will draw their attention." Sung smiled. It was not a nice smile. "I understand, Commander." "Major Kwan, you will take the second group underground. The Velori have old tunnels beneath the surface. They used them for mining centuries ago. The Morthak do not know about them. You will use these tunnels to flank the enemy. When Captain Sung begins his attack, you will hit them from behind." Kwan nodded. "And the third group?" Hana looked at the map, at the crater where the Hive Queen waited. "The third group is mine. We are going to kill the Queen." The officers exchanged glances. They knew what that meant. The Queen would be surrounded by her strongest warriors. Getting to her would be almost impossible. Getting out alive would be even harder. "Commander," Sora said quietly, "the chances of survival for the third group are very low." "I know," Hana replied. "That is why I am leading it myself." The attack began at dawn. Captain Sung led his forces across the eastern plain in a wave of fire and metal. Tanks rolled forward, their cannons blazing. Infantry followed behind, firing at everything that moved. The Morthak screamed and charged to meet them. The battle was brutal. For every Morthak that fell, 2 more took its place. Human soldiers died, torn apart by bladed limbs and crushing jaws. But they kept fighting. They kept pushing forward. They were buying time. Underground, Major Kwan moved through the dark tunnels with 500 soldiers at his back. The passages were narrow and old, filled with dust and strange crystals that glowed with faint light. It was hot. The air was thin. Perfect conditions for humans, terrible conditions for the Morthak. Private Yoon Jai-hai walked at the front of the column. She was small and quiet, with quick hands and quicker reflexes. Her job was simple. If anything waited in the darkness ahead, she would find it first. She found the first Morthak scout in a side passage. It never saw her coming. Her knife slid between the plates of its armor, finding the soft flesh beneath. The creature died without a sound. "Clear," she whispered. They kept moving. Above ground, Hana led her team toward the crater. They moved fast, using the smoke and chaos of the battle to cover their approach. There were only 20 soldiers with her, 20 volunteers who knew they might not come back. The crater was a nightmare. The Queen had turned it into a nest, filling it with structures made of bone and metal. Thousands of Morthak warriors crawled over those structures, protecting their mother. "We go in fast," Hana said. "We kill anything that moves, we plant the bomb, we get out." "And if we cannot get out?" asked one of her soldiers. Hana looked at him. His name was Park Yi. He was 23 years old. He had a wife waiting for him on Earth. "Then we make sure the bomb goes off anyway," she said. They attacked. 20 humans against thousands of Morthak. It should have been suicide. It was suicide, but they kept fighting anyway. Hana led the charge, her mech suit amplifying her strength and speed. She crashed through the first line of defenders, her weapons blazing. Morthak fell around her like leaves in a storm. She did not stop. Behind her, her soldiers fought and died. Park Yi was the first to fall, a Morthak blade through his chest. Two more followed seconds later, then three more. They were being cut down and they knew it. But they kept fighting. Hana reached the center of the nest. The queen was there, waiting. She was massive, 3 stories tall, with a body that pulsed with sickly light, her many eyes fixed on the small human approaching. "Hello," Hana said. "I brought you a gift." She raised her arm. Strapped to her mech's back was an antimatter charge, enough to destroy everything in a 5-kilometer radius. The queen screamed and sent her warriors forward. Hana smiled, too slow. She pressed the button. The world turned white. 20 kilometers away, Captain Sung saw the flash. The ground shook. A mushroom cloud rose from the crater, reaching toward the stars. And then something amazing happened. The Morthak stopped fighting. All across the battlefield, the creatures froze. Their eyes went blank. Their bodies twitched and shook. Without the queen's mind guiding them, they were nothing but confused animals. "The queen is dead," someone shouted. The human army roared. They charged forward, slaughtering the confused Morthak by the thousands. The creatures tried to flee, but there was nowhere to go. Underground, Major Quan heard the news over his radio. He led his soldiers out of the tunnels and into the light. They emerged behind the Morthak lines and began their work. It was not battle anymore. It was extermination. By sunset, it was over. The Morthak swarm was broken. The survivors fled into the wilderness, lost and directionless. The city of Luminara was saved. And somewhere in the ruins of the crater, rescue teams searched for survivors. They found Commander Hana Rin 3 hours later. She was alive. Barely. Her mech's shielding had absorbed most of the blast. She was burned and broken, but she was breathing. "Did we win?" she whispered. The medic leaning over her smiled. "Yes, Commander, we won." Hana closed her eyes. Good. Then she slept. The silence after battle was always the hardest part. Medic Nari Kim walked through the field hospital, her boots splashing in puddles of blood and medicine. The tent was filled with wounded soldiers lying on cots, waiting for treatment. Some of them would live. Some of them would not. Nari had learned long ago not to make promises. She had been a doctor on Earth before joining the military. She had worked in emergency rooms in Seoul, treating car crash victims and heart attack patients. She thought she understood pain and death. The war had taught her otherwise. "Medic," someone called, "over here." Nari ran to the voice. A young soldier was lying on a cot, her face pale with shock. Her left leg was gone below the knee, taken by a Morthak blade. Another medic was trying to stop the bleeding, but it was not working. "Hold her down," Nari ordered. She pulled out her equipment and went to work. It took 20 minutes to save the girl's life. When it was done, Nari stepped back, her hands shaking. The girl was unconscious, but she would survive. She would need a prosthetic leg. She would never run the same way again, but she would live. "Good work," said a voice behind her. Nari turned. Sergeant Wu Jinho was standing there, his right arm wrapped in bandages. He looked tired. They all looked tired. "Your arm," Nari said. "You should be resting." Wu shrugged. "I have rested enough. There are people who need help." Nari looked at his arm. The bandages were already stained red. She remembered what had happened during the evacuation. Wu had lost his arm pulling a Velori child from the rubble. A Morthak had caught him, its blade cutting through armor and flesh. He had kept fighting anyway, using his remaining arm to carry wounded soldiers to the shuttle. "You saved a lot of people," she said. "Not enough," Wu replied. His voice was quiet. "There were so many I could not reach." Nari understood. She felt the same way. Every soldier who died on her table was a failure. Every life she could not save was a weight on her soul. But she had learned to carry those weights. She had no choice. "We do what we can," she said. "That is all anyone can ask." Wu looked at her for a long moment, then he nodded slowly. Will I fight again? Nari considered the question. His arm was badly damaged. The nerve connections were destroyed, but human medicine had advanced far beyond what it had been centuries ago. Yes, she said. The Fleet Medical Bay has prosthetics that will be even better than your original arm. You will be back on your feet in a week. Wu laughed. It was a broken sound, filled with exhaustion and something that might have been relief. Deathworlders do not stay down, he said. No, Nari agreed, we do not. Across the battlefield, Lieutenant Handiho was counting the dead. 42 soldiers from the first wave had not come back. 42 names that would be carved into memorial walls on Earth. 42 families who would receive messages telling them their loved ones had died heroes on a moon they had never heard of. Han knew some of those names. He had trained with them. He had fought beside them. He had watched them die. Private Park Yi was on the list. He had been part of Commander Hana's suicide mission. He had died in the crater, buying time for the commander to reach the Queen. His wife was pregnant with their first child. Han closed his eyes. He allowed himself one moment of grief, one moment of anger at the universe that demanded such sacrifices. Then he opened his eyes and got back to work. There were still survivors to rescue, still Morthak to hunt down, still a job to do. In orbit, Admiral T received the latest reports from the surface. The battle was won. The Morthak swarm was broken. Over 40,000 enemy warriors had been killed. The Hive Queen was dead. The survivors had scattered into the wilderness, where they would eventually die without their collective mind to guide them. But victory had come at a cost. 2 human warships had been destroyed in the orbital battle. Another 5 were badly damaged. On the surface, 42 soldiers had died. Over 100 more were wounded. 3 of them would not survive the night. T looked at the numbers on his screen. Each number was a life. Each life was a universe of memories, hopes, and dreams. All of them gone because he had made a choice to answer a distress signal. Admiral, Yuna's voice interrupted his thoughts. The Velori Council is requesting communication. T straightened his uniform, put them through. The main display flickered. The face of the Velori ambassador appeared. The same face from the distress signal. The same thin features and translucent skin. But the terror in those large eyes had been replaced by something else. Something that took T a moment to recognize. It was wonder. Admiral, the ambassador said, his voice shook with emotion. I do not have words. In our language, there is no way to express what you have done for us. We called for help. No one answered, no one except you. T remained silent. He did not know what to say. We have studied your species, the ambassador continued. The Galactic Council told us you were dangerous. They said you came from a death world. They said you knew only violence. They warned us to stay away from you. And now, T asked. The ambassador's eyes filled with tears. They were not human tears. They were thicker, almost like gel, but they meant the same thing. Now I understand, the ambassador said. You are dangerous. You do no violence, but you use that violence to protect. You use that danger to save. We called for salvation, Admiral. Death answered, and death was kind. T felt something tighten in his chest. It was not pride, exactly. It was something more complicated, something that mixed sorrow and hope and determination into a single emotion that had no name. We did what we could, he said. We wish we could have done more. You did everything, the ambassador replied. You lost your own people saving ours. You fought monsters from the void for strangers you had never met. In all the galaxies, in all the star systems, there is no species like yours. You are terrifying, and you are beautiful. The communication ended. The screen went dark. Yuna looked at her admiral. The Velori are beginning their reconstruction, she said. They have requested human engineers to help rebuild their cities. Approved, T said. Commander Hana Rin has been recovered from the crater. Medical reports say she will survive. Promote her to Colonel, T ordered. She earned it. Yuna smiled. Yes, sir. T turned back to the viewport. Below, the moon of Shalvara was still burning in places, but the fires were dying. The smoke was clearing. Life would return. He thought about the soldiers who had died. Park Yi, the others, 42 heroes who would never go home. He would remember their names. He would make sure they were never forgotten. But he also thought about the Velori children in those shelters. 300,000 lives saved because humanity had answered a call. 300,000 futures made possible because 42 soldiers had given everything they had. It was not a fair trade. It was never a fair trade. But it was the trade humans had always been willing to make. T closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would begin the long journey home. He would face the Galactic Council. He would explain his actions. He would accept whatever consequences came. But tonight he would rest, and he would know that for once humanity had done something good. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. Every species with access to the communication networks heard what had happened on the Velori moon. A distress signal had gone out. The Galactic Council had ignored it. And then, from a small blue planet in an unremarkable star system, a fleet had come. Deathworlders, humans, the monsters from Earth. They had fought the Morthax swarm. They had killed a hive queen. They had saved 300,000 Velori civilians, and they had asked for nothing in return. The galaxy did not know what to make of this. In the great halls of the council station, diplomats whispered in corners. Some were afraid. A species that could destroy the Morthac could destroy anyone. Others were curious. Why would anyone risk so much for strangers? And a very few, felt something new, something that might have been hope. Admiral Tikwansu stood before the Galactic Assembly, facing hundreds of alien species. They floated on platforms arranged in a massive dome, their forms as varied as the stars they came from. Some were tall and thin. Others were short and wide. Some had too many limbs. Others had no limbs at all. They were ancient races, civilizations that had existed for millions of years, looking down at a representative of a species barely old enough to leave its own planet. T was not impressed. "You have been summoned to explain your actions," said the council speaker. It was a massive creature, shaped like a floating jellyfish, with tentacles that glowed with bioluminescent light. You interfered in a situation that the council had chosen to ignore. You deployed military forces without authorization. You engaged in combat operations within sovereign territory. T listened patiently. When the speaker finished, he nodded slowly. "Yes," he said, "I did all of those things." The assembly murmured. They had expected denial. They had expected excuses. They had not expected honesty. "And would you do it again?" the speaker asked. "Yes," T replied, without hesitation. The murmuring grew louder. Some of the diplomats looked angry. Others looked confused. A few, including the Velori representatives, looked proud. "You must understand our concern," the speaker continued. "Earth is classified as a Class 7 death world. Your species evolved in conditions that would kill most sentient beings. You are stronger, faster, and more aggressive than any other civilization in the Council. Your capacity for violence is extraordinary." "I'm aware of how you see us," T said. "Then surely you understand why we are worried. Today, you used your power to save the Velori. Tomorrow, you might use it to conquer. How can we trust a species born from such a brutal world?" T was silent for a moment. He thought about his answer carefully. The words he spoke now would shape how the galaxy viewed humanity for generations. "You are correct," he finally said. "Our world tried to kill us every day. We evolved fighting for survival against predators, diseases, natural disasters, and each other. We know violence better than any species in this room. We are dangerous." He paused. But you misunderstand what our world taught us. Yes, Earth made us strong. Yes, it made us stubborn. Yes, it made us refuse to die. But it also taught us something more important. He looked around the assembly, meeting the eyes of species who had dismissed humanity as savages. Our world taught us that survival means nothing if you survive alone. Our ancestors learned that lesson early. A single human alone in the wilderness would die. A group of humans working together could survive anything. We are social creatures. We protect our families. We protect our friends. We protect our communities. His voice hardened. And when we heard the Velori calling for help, they became our community. The assembly fell silent. You call Earth a death world, T continued. You are right. It is a world of death, but it is also a world of life. It is a world that taught us to value every living thing because we knew how easily life could be taken away. It is a world that taught us to fight for what we love because nothing worth having comes without a fight. He stepped forward, his presence suddenly seeming larger than his physical form. The Velori sent a distress signal. They were dying. Their children were dying. The council chose to ignore them. You decided they were not worth saving. You calculated the risks and determined that the cost was too high. His voice dropped, becoming quieter but somehow more dangerous. We do not make those calculations. When someone calls for help, we answer. When someone is suffering, we act. When someone threatens the innocent, we fight. This is not a strategy. This is not politics. This is who we are. He spread his hands. You can fear us if you want. You can call us monsters. You can treat us as dangerous. You might even be right. But know this, we will never use our strength to conquer. We will never use our power to destroy. We will use them to protect. He looked directly at the council speaker. Any species that threatens the innocent will answer to Earth. Any species that needs help will find us ready. This is not a threat. This is a promise. The assembly remained silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the Velori representative rose from their platform. The small alien floated forward until they were level with T. The Velori accept the human promise, they said. We have seen the truth of their words. They came when no one else would. They fought when everyone else ran. They gave their lives for strangers. Other species began to rise. The Fenari, a race of small furry beings who had been conquered and freed 3 times in their history. The Corval, insectoid creatures who valued honor above all things. The Manthi, amphibious scientists who had studied humanity from afar for decades. One by one, they added their voices. The Fenari accept the human promise. The Corval accept the human promise. The Manthi accept the human promise. More followed, then more. The murmuring turned into a chorus. Not every species joined. Some remained silent, still afraid, still suspicious. But enough voices rose to fill the great dome with sound. The council speaker watched this happen. Their tentacles flickered with complex emotions that T could not read. Finally, they nodded. The Galactic Council acknowledges the human action on Shalvara, they said. No formal punishment will be issued. Furthermore, Earth will be granted provisional membership in the Council, with full diplomatic rights and responsibilities. T bowed slightly. Thank you. We still fear you, the speaker added. Perhaps we always will, but perhaps fear is not the only thing you inspire. 6 months later, the moon of Shalvara was healing. Human engineers worked alongside Velori artisans, rebuilding the crystal cities that had been destroyed. The work was slow, careful, respectful. The humans learned how to shape crystal. The Velori learned how to build structures that could withstand attack. Together, they created something new. Something that was neither human nor Velori, but something in between. Colonel Hana Rin, still recovering from her injuries, visited the reconstruction site. She walked through the streets of Luminara with a cane, her body still healing from the antimatter blast that should have killed her. Everywhere she went, Velori stopped to bow. Children ran up to touch her hand, giggling at the strange warmth of human skin. "They call you the Queen Slayer," said her guide, a young Velori named Vel. "You are a hero to our people." Hana shook her head. "I did what needed to be done. That does not make me a hero." "Perhaps not to you," Vel said. "But to us you are. You came from a world of death to bring us life. You sacrificed yourself to save our children. There is no greater heroism." Hana stopped walking. She looked at the crystal towers rising around her, catching the light and turning it into rainbows. She thought about the soldiers who had died beside her, Park Yi, the others, 42 names she would never forget. "I did not do it alone," she said quietly. "Many good people gave their lives for this. Do not forget them." "We will not," Vel promised. "Every year on the anniversary of the battle we will remember, humans and Velori together, forever." Hana smiled. It was a tired smile, carrying the weight of everything she had seen and done, but it was genuine. In the shadow of a rebuilt tower, children played. Velori children with their thin limbs and translucent skin. Human children from the engineering families who had come to help with reconstruction. They laughed together, chasing each other through the streets, their differences forgotten in the simple joy of being alive. Hana watched them for a long moment. Humanity had been called monsters, Deathworlders, dangerous. Perhaps those labels were true. Perhaps they would always be true. But looking at those children playing together, Hana knew something else was also true. Sometimes the galaxy needed monsters. Monsters willing to answer a distress signal. Monsters willing to fight for strangers. Monsters willing to die for something greater than themselves. The Velori had called for help and Deathworlders had answered. Not because they had to, not because they would gain anything, but because it was right. And in the end, that was the most human thing of all.